Welcome. I'm Nur Sofia Aisha binti Muharram, student finance from Business Administration program UiTM Puncak Alam. In this video, I will share about debt-based monetary system under Islamic finance. So, here we go. What is debt-based monetary system? Debt-oriented financing has to be built in the context of monetary system based on the fractional reserve banking model. In debt-based financing system, money and finance are interlinked as interest-based from both and has been accorded significant pricing advantages. Fractional reserve banking is a system in which a fraction of bank deposits are backed by actual cash on hand and available for withdrawal. This is done theoretically expand the economy by freeing capital for lending. How the money works? When the currency is deposited in the bank lend to the customer. Then it gets redeposited from the customer and relent from banks. Redeposited and relent again and again and over again. Thus, it creating bank credits all the way in the banking system. Banks are required to keep on hand a certain amount of cash that the depositor give to them. But banks are not required to keep the entire amount on hand. In Malaysia, all banking institutions are required to keep a reserve with BNM or central bank that is called statutory reserve requirement. To visualize the explanation, here is how fractional reserve banking works in the monetary system.
Banks are allowed to create money through a system called fractional reserve banking. Whenever you deposit money, the bank is legally required to keep a certain percentage of it somewhere safe, but can lend everything else. Here's an example based on a 10% reserve requirement. John goes to his bank and deposits $1,000. John's bank keeps $100 and lends the remaining $900 to Mike. There is now $1,900 in the financial system. John's $1,000 deposit and Mike's $900 loan. Next, Mike uses the $900 to buy a laptop from Karen. Then Karen deposits her $900 at another bank. The bank keeps 10% and lends the remaining $810 to George. There is now $2,710 in the system. John's $1,000 deposit, Karen's $900 deposit, and George's $810 loan. This goes on and on until John's initial $1,000 is turned into approximately $10,000. Believe it or not, commercial banks actually create more money.
So, statutory reserve requirement is an instrument to manage liquidity. All banking institutions are required to maintain balance in their statutory reserve account (SRA) equivalent to a certain of their eligible liabilities (EL), and this proportion being statutory reserve requirement rate. In the monetary system, fiat money created by a central bank as authorized by the government to enter the economy as borrowings by commercial banks on one side, lending to the business and household on the other side. Interest is involved for both cases.
Reserve ratio is the amount of cash a bank must keep in its vaults or deposit into a central governing bank. The percentage is based on the bank's total deposits. Governments often use reserve requirements as a control over the money supply. The basic money supply of most countries is made up of cash plus the total of all bank demand deposits. The reserve ratio creates a multiplier effect on the cash. When a person deposits $1,000 in the bank is not required to keep all of that $1,000 on hand in case the depositor wants it back later. The bank is only required to keep a portion on hand. The percentage of cash the bank is required to keep, and thus not lend out, is the reserve ratio. In most developed countries, the majority of the cash reserve is kept at the central governing bank, and a fraction is in the bank's own vaults. The cash is transferred between the two based on daily cash needs. In the United States, the Federal Reserve controls the reserve ratio requirements. Currently, banks with deposits of less than $14.5 million have zero reserve requirements. For banks with deposits between $14.5 million and $103.6 million, the reserve requirement is 3%. It's 10% for banks with deposits exceeding $103.6 million.
In order to implement Sharia-based model, Islamic finance cannot refrain from debt-based financing unless the government is prepared to replace the existing financing fractional reserve banking model with entirely Sharia-based model. But there is a challenge to implement Sharia in our country. If it implemented until such time, Islamic financiers must ensure that the scope of Islamic debt-based financing is limited for constructing and essential purposes only. That's all from me. Thank you.